Hello, my name is Vesa Juvonen, and in this video we will have a closer look how to implement a self-service site collection creation using provider-hosted app in an on-premises environment. And the reason why we have this video created is that in the on-premises environment we actually don't have a native support to create site collections remotely using the CSOM, the client-side object model. That capability is available within the SharePoint Online. So if you would like to take advantage of the SharePoint app or the CAM world within the on-premises, which is definitely recommended as well, you would have to figure out how to implement this site collection provisioning capability within your app and within your customizations. And what I'm going to do here is quickly walk through the functionality, and while we're waiting the site collection to be actually created, I'm going to show the structures and the Visual Studio solutions and all of that. Let's try to be relatively fast so this doesn't take too long to explain. So what I have here, let's go back on the front page of the site. So this is pretty simple out-of-the-box theme site, slightly modified UI, dropped some elements. What I've done here is that I've installed using Visual Studio my customization or SharePoint provider-hosted app into this site collection. And since we don't have this site collection creation capability natively within CSOM in on-premises, I've extended the native capabilities using a custom WCF endpoint, which this provider-hosted application is then calling. So this is the provider-hosted application, which is running in the local host in the local host now because it's actually in a debugging mode. So let's give it a title. Let's call this test 123. Description as test 123, and the URL name for the upcoming site collection would be test 123. In the administrators, we need to provide the primary administrator, and in this case, the UI design is not optimal. So we can certainly implement a proper people picker in a provider-hosted application as well. In this case, I haven't included that one in to keep the code relatively simple. There will be a separate blog post about that one later on. And then I can select what kind of template do I want to use. And these are, well, this reference to out-of-the-box templates, but depending, well, what I'm selecting, it's regardless which I'm selecting, it will apply a custom branding on top of that particular site or that particular site collection which is created. So let's create a Contoso theme site, which will essentially create a out-of-the-box theme sign, and then it will apply the custom branding using a theme on top of that one. So it's going to upload the required theme elements. Let's move back on the Visual Studio while it's working on it and have a look how the Visual Studio structure is actually looking. So in this case, what I've done is that we have quite a few projects here. So we do have 4 projects, and I'll briefly explain what these are and what they are used. Sorry about that. Let's actually resume. So the first one, which is which is the Contoso Services Site Manager. In here is actually the custom extension point for the WCF endpoint, or it's the custom full trust solution to deploy that custom WCF endpoint. Then we do have the actual app provider-hosted app project, which is the app file which is going to be deployed on the site collection. And this order to farm, and this is actually the provider-hosted web, which is going to be running outside of the SharePoint context within a completely separate servers in the production. And this is just a form tester application, which I used for when I created the WCF endpoint, just to test that the WCF endpoint and everything is working properly. So let's actually slightly expand that. I can actually see that the site collection has been now created. So before we go to the actual code and structures, let's have a look what we actually got within our request. So as part of the request, there was that animation, working on it animation ongoing, and then we got created a site collection in the dev.contoso.com/site/test123. And as you can see, it has a custom branding automatically applied on top of the site collection. It has been created using the provider hosted application, and we are essentially good to go. This is an Out-of-the-box theme site. We could have included custom document libraries, content types, whatever we want, obviously as part of this provisioning event. And when you think of it, this is not necessarily the best and optimal end user experience that I had to wait the site collection to be created and watching that that animation. Maybe a better approach would be actually to create a store that requests somewhere and then have a time job time job style implementation of a SharePoint app, which will then scan these requests and provision them after a while. So in that case, the end user wouldn't be locked on the UI. Anyway, that's something which can be easily extended on the solution what we have now here, and let's walk through this slightly. So what we have here is one full trust solution, which is actually deploying that site manager extension endpoint, and it has a one farm level feature. The farm level feature is created, a application scope feature is created to extend the timeout for the WCF endpoint, because the site collection creation actually might take quite a long time. So we extend the timeout for the WCF endpoint to be 15 minutes, which is pretty easily done using standard server-side code. So if I go to the event receivers and extend this one, we're able to see the extension of the timeout to 15 minutes pretty easily using the SPWCF services settings. And then what we do is that we deploy this site manager SVC, which is the WCF endpoint extension, to the farm. So it's waiting there and providing us those additional capabilities which are needed for the on-premises. And what I have actually implemented in that WCF endpoint is a few different capabilities. So we have a create site collection method. We have the list site collections method, which is returning the list of all the site collections within the particular application. We're able to create a content type with a specific ID. And there was a document information policy settings and document information setting and getting policy information document settings. And these are some of those capabilities which are not natively available within the client-side object model, but this way we can easily extend the capabilities. So as part of the provisioning, we can take advantage of these WCF endpoints and extensions from the provider hosted apps. And at this point, somebody might be thinking, so wait a minute, so this, however, means that you need to deploy one additional farm solution, which is true. But we need to remember that this is kind of a special farm solution. This doesn't deploy anything which we need to maintain. It only exposes certain native server-side APIs to be used remotely. So all of the future maintenance and operations and changes will be then applied to our provider hosted apps. And this will mean that we don't have to do that many service breaks or schedule service downtime for the farm. We're just exposing additional APIs which are then available using JavaScript or server-side code running in the provider hosted app. So even though it's kind of a funny thing that we need to deploy a farm solution, it kind of makes sense to make it as simple and efficient and let's say precise to expose those capabilities. And then in the future, later on, when we have these capabilities natively within the product to create the site collections, we can easily update and remove this farm solution without impacting any of the existing site collections. So we don't actually create any dependencies to this farm solution. So this is just for exposing additional capabilities. So what else do we have? We have the app file, the SharePoint app project is pretty simple. We don't have actually any app web. We don't have anything special with this one. And it's only pointing to our provider hosted app. And the provider hosted app is then the one which has the service reference, that site manager. So it's actually calling that WCF endpoint. The only kind of a sad thing when you think of it is that what we have to do here is that we have to impersonate, and that's has to be done for the sake that we don't have an OAuth authentication scheme which we could actually take granted while we are creating these site collections in the on-premises, because we don't have that capability of checkup for the OAuth action in the on-premises form. So therefore, what I'm doing in the create click is that I'm creating first the site collection using a impersonated call, which means that what I'm doing here is that when I'm creating that the definition or the calling the WSF endpoint, I'm actually impersonating to a specific account. So we have a app settings for this provider hosted application to set the user ID, password, and a domain. And this essentially it means that this particular account has to have the right permissions in the web application level to create then those site collections. Then there's alternative ways to achieve the same thing, but essentially this is making sure that whenever we execute this WSF endpoint, it is executed using this special account which has the right permissions to actually create the site collections in a SharePoint form. And then the following step after that, immediately when the site collection is created, then we can actually operate and do all of the additional stuff using just standard SharePoint or auth capabilities. So we're gonna open up the SharePoint context to the particular URL which we just created using that WSF endpoint, and then the following step is just to apply or upload the theme files to the site collection and apply the theme to the site. So pretty straightforward at this point. What we have is then the branded site collection, which also has a custom theme files included. So if we go to the change the look capability, we have this Contoso theme available, which is essentially the custom theme what we are now using. And this has been now uploaded as part of the site provisioning for the site collection. So pretty simple. The final project what I have on the Visual Studio solution, I kind of mentioned that one already while we were waiting the site collection to be created, is a simple form application which I actually have up and running here, which was used for testing that the WSF endpoint is working properly. So I can create site collections remotely, I can create content types remotely, I can enum site collections using a specific account. Essentially, I'm just mimicking what the provider hosted application was going to do. And I'm able to then test the whole capability remotely. Give me a second, there's some breakpoints, and here we go. If we go back on the form, we can see that the enum of the site collections is returning those site collections what we have on the particular web application. We do have few host name site collections there as well, so that's the reason why it might look kind of funny. Anyway, pretty simple stuff, but I think this is also a pretty powerful thing to test the WCF endpoints and shows the simple ways of testing. Obviously, you could actually do a testing project in the Visual Studio as well. I'm just an old school guy who loves to write those Windows form testers, just for giving me, well, old school way of testing stuff. It's up to you how do you actually want to test this. Anyway, simple stuff. You can download this example from my blog post. The whole objective of this one was to make sure that within the on-premises, we have a essentially standardized way of creating site collections using provider-hosted apps, using similar patterns as we have in the SharePoint Online. So, and we can then, whenever this capability is available natively within a product in on-prem, we just remove that section within the code and start using the native out-of-the-box capabilities, and that's it. And the only place where we actually need to make that change is in the provider-hosted app. So we don't need to go to the SharePoint side. We don't need to do any service breaks on the SharePoint side. We only modify and maintain that non-SharePoint servers, which means that all of the site collections, all of the applications will be up and running, even though we would do some maintenance within our app, which is pretty cool. Thanks for your time. Hopefully this was useful.